Hey everybody, happy Friday. It's so good to see you guys. And you know what time it is. It's Entrepreneur Hot Seat Day. So we'll be right back. And we're back. And you guys know the drill. Every week I bring an entrepreneur and I sit him on the hot seat and I take them back to their teen years where they were facing their biggest struggles and challenges. And we talk about how they overcame them to become the successful entrepreneurs that they are today. And today I have with me Miss Mel Andre. How are you?
I am doing wonderful. I'm doing wonderful. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm really happy we get to have this chat. Although you and I have talked before about entrepreneurship, but this time I have you on the hot seat and we're going to talk about some juicy stuff. Yeah. So why don't you first tell everybody, I mean, they already know who you are, you're Mel, but tell them a little bit what you do and then we'll go back.
Perfect. So my name is Mel. I am a serial entrepreneur. I am a motivational speaker, confidence coach, and an international best-selling author. And there's a little bit more, but I like to kind of keep it condensed because the list can get long.
Well, that's good. That's a good intro. That's a good intro. So, Mel, you know the drill. You know what I'm going to ask you. So, time to spill the beans. Let's talk about those younger years. What was your biggest challenge?
So, I'll say younger years were really, really great, but I'm going to jump into my teenage years. Yes. So I started coming out to people, you know, telling them that I'm gay, this and that. I did not tell my family, however. I did not tell my family. I didn't think my family suspected a thing. And then one day I'm about to go to my friend's house and my parents sat me down and they're like, Mel, are you gay? And I was like, no. But they already, they already knew. And they're like, Mel, are you gay? And I was like, no. And maybe for 5 minutes, it was like back and forth. I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm gay. And that really put a strain on our relationship because I had a great relationship with my parents. I have a great relationship with my parents now. But during that time, it put a really, really big strain on our relationship because my parents are not American. Well, technically, my mom was born here, but my parents aren't really American. In their various cultures, some very mixed. In their various cultures, you know, homosexuality really isn't a thing. And if it is a thing, it's very much pushed under the rug. And let's see, that was probably 2005, 2006 that all that was happening. And although there was a lot of strides going, that was, at that time, gay marriage wasn't legal. At that time, gay couples couldn't really adopt. So there was a lot of things where it's not like it is today. Like it can be a little bit easier. Again, still very difficult for a lot of kids, but take what it is today and then go back a decade. It wasn't what it is today. So it was very hard. And my parents really didn't understand me. And I went from being, I'm going to be so honest right now. I went from being the perfect kid. I mean, the perfect kid. So I was like, all right, this one thing is going to cause me so much drama. All right, I give up. I'm not going to be the perfect kid anymore. Which I'm going to tell the kids listening. If at the end of the day, that's going to hurt you. That is going to hurt you. That attitude of, oh, so you don't accept this one part of my life, so I'm just going to give up. In the end, that's going to end up hurting you in the long run. So kind of think about it. I know it's hard to be, you know, under your parents, especially when they're not accepting of your lifestyle, they're not accepting of just things about you, but you can deal with for a while and make sure that you're putting yourself first. So I rebelled. I rebelled a lot. Because I partied, nothing too crazy, but I definitely rebelled. I ended up doing the whole thug look.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You know, back then, like 2000, 2006, 2007, everyone's like with the big baggy clothes and everything. I was like, I'm going to adopt that. There, boom, in your face. So I definitely rebelled. And that put an even bigger strain on my relationship with my parents. I ended up moving as soon as I graduated high school. My parents and I got into this big fight and they didn't want me back in the house. I was like, all right, I'm leaving. I'm going to move back to Brooklyn. And because they were living in Maryland at the time, and I moved back to Brooklyn and rebelled some more.
Oh yeah. So what
Yeah.
and what was going on? Like, so how was the relationship? It was very strained, and what was going on in your head? Or were you just thinking of partying, or were you suffering inside? What was going on inside?
So looking back at it now, I was definitely suffering because I went from having this great relationship with my parents to now we still had a relationship. It was very shaky. We got into a lot more arguments, a lot more fights. It was bad. And it took a lot of time to rebuild. But if you would have asked me at that time if I was hurting, like any teenager, I'm like, what? No, I'm not hurting. That doesn't bother me. I'm out here living my life. I'm going to party. But they still did they, even though we had a big strain, they still did like the parental things. So it's like, they helped me move into my dorm for college. They still were there hoping I would change. I honestly swear they were hoping that I would like change, but it was a big strain. It was constant fights, constant arguments, a lot of things that shouldn't have been said on both sides. Because I'm never gonna like I'm at this position now where I can look back and yes, a lot of things that my parents said to me were not okay, but a lot of things that I said to my parents were not okay as well. So there's a lot of negativity on both sides, and I think if we all three of us would have come together in a different way, we could have worked it out. We could have spoke about it, and I could have let them understand a lot more about me. But I was just too busy
Living your life.
my life.
So you would say that you guys were stuck, like usually what happens to most people in a reactive situation.
Mm-hmm.
Where you guys, yeah, you were just reacting instead of just taking the time to pause and think. Okay, and so when did things start changing? Like when did things start getting better?
I would say things got better after I got out of a really bad relationship, which I know we're going to get to that. But I think things started getting better once I got out of a really horrible situation. We just had to take we all just took a huge step back. I took a huge step back and kind of talk things out. And that's, I can say honestly, where all the healing began.
Okay, so before we go into healing, I want to thank everyone that's watching. I'm talking to Mel Andre, and we're talking about relationships and basically right now how to deal with problems and negativity in a relationship, and how sometimes we all become so reactive, you know, and then we don't even realize that we make the situation worse. And then we start acting out in certain behaviors, like Mel, you know, when we're young, rebellious behavior, doing things that you shouldn't do, acting out. And it's something that, you know, I feel like it's a stage we all go through. It's inevitable. But, you know, if you can learn from the stories and learn from people's experiences, that's the beauty of today, is being able to learn from someone else's story and taking that into stock so that you don't have to make the same mistakes, you know, yourself. You know, save time, learn from the experience of others, and learn from the mistakes and hardships of others, right? That's why we're up here telling it. So let's go into the story then. Let's talk about the rebellious time. So you're rebelling. When you were rebelling, what do you mean? Were you rebelling in your going out? Were you rebelling in your relationships? What were you doing?
I would say that I was so nothing too crazy, but I was definitely rebelling in any way that I can. Because if you really look at the situation, I really was the perfect kid. Like I had fun. Don't get me wrong. I had fun. I went out with my friends. Like I did things, but once that thing just clicked in my head, I was like, all right, I'm gonna live my life. I'll say this. I love listening to The Weeknd because I'm like, gosh, The Weeknd is just me in my early 20s. Like I feel such a connection to like The Weeknd's music because I'm like, wow, like the partying women, like that was just, it's just like especially his earlier work, I was like, wow, that's just so reminiscent of my early 20s
years. Well, let's talk about the relationships then. What relationships were you getting into? Were they good? Were they healthy? Were they, I mean.
So I will say between the ages of 18 to 20, I wasn't into relationships. I was an eligible bachelor, and I lived my life like an eligible bachelor. And they weren't, and again, like when you're just partying, meeting people, you're not really meeting people who are of the caliber of people that you want to meet. But I did end up meeting one lady. I don't say her name because I never want I never like to fully bring her in. Like even in the book, I gave her another name. But if she ever wants to come and talk live about what happened, then I'll feel free to bring her name into it. But so I met her, and we were on this, like this on and off again type of situationship. And that went around for about a couple of years. And if I partied hard, she partied 20 times harder. She was definitely about having that fun life. But I guess in my, like maybe 22, 23, we ended up saying that, you know what, we've had so much fun doing everything that we're doing. Why don't we like actually get into a relationship now? And we actually got into a relationship. And from that point, everything was good. You know, I was working, she was doing her, this and that. And we were together, and we've known each other for such a long time, since I was 18, that I was like, you know, I know this person. I thought I knew her inside and out. I thought I knew everything about her. I thought I knew her flaws, her strengths, everything. I proposed to her. We ended up going to Baltimore. I proposed to her on a pier. It was beautiful. She ended up moving in with me, and everything was great until one day it wasn't. So she actually had 2 kids from a previous relationship. So I took on the responsibility of, okay, just move down here, because she was in Jersey, I was in Maryland. I was like, just move down here. I'll take care of all of you guys until you find a job. It took her a little bit longer to find a job. So I ended up working 2 jobs. Wow. But even though I was working 2 jobs, I made sure I had a day off so I can take them out, do things with the family, because I'm a very family-oriented person. And I thought I was doing everything right. I had 2 jobs to take care of my family. I made time for them. It wasn't just like coming home and sleeping. Right. And I thought I was doing everything right. And then all of a sudden, things just started getting weird, to the point where I only had 4 to 3 hours of sleep before I had to go to the part-time job. And she was like pulling me off the bed, pushing me, and just being extremely aggressive. Mm-hmm. And it just started with little things like that. And those should have been huge red flags.
Exactly.
What I didn't know was, when I was at work working all those hours, she was heading to a liquor store and drinking all day.
Oh, I see. Mm-hmm.
So I didn't know this. So then I was dealing with this person who was constantly intoxicating. And it just started getting worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
And I was like, and again, I did the thing that no one should ever do. I started blaming it on me. I was like, oh my gosh, are you lonely? Is there something wrong? Like, what's going on? Let's go out there. Let's help you make friends. Like, I introduced her to people. I helped her make her own friends. And the thing is, I'm not a jealous person. I'm not a controlling person. I am super chill. So if I see an issue, I try to find a solution. So I assumed, I'm a fixer. So I assumed that maybe I was doing something wrong. Maybe she was lonely. Maybe she was missing her family in New Jersey. I just assumed that it was something that I could fix. But you can't fix someone else's own personal thing. So so even though she was making friends, even though it just started getting more and more violent, and there was more lies, and there was just more deceit, and just things really, really started getting bad. And I really didn't understand what was happening, and I was trying to fix it. She eventually did get a job. She ended up working nights, so I quit my part-time job and went back to managing the company that I was managing at that time, and just solely doing that, which I thought was going to make things better, because I now had more time I could spend with her, so she wouldn't be lonely. She was making her own money. So I thought, okay, there you go. Maybe she was feeling like she didn't have independence and this and that. So I thought that everything was going to be fine, because what I thought was the issue was fixed. And the thing about it is, if anyone ever turns violent against you, it has nothing to do with what you're doing. Nothing you can do, unless you're violent first, but nothing that you do should ever warrant someone using violence against you.
Exactly.
And as I started finding things that I thought were solutions, I realized the issue kept getting worse. Like, it just kept getting worse day by day by day. It was horrible.
I think what happens is it's a call for attention. Mm-hmm. The person doesn't even themselves have the self-awareness that they're not well. And so, you trying to make that attempt to help only makes it bigger, because the problem is within. They can't fix it. So they're trying to make a bigger stink, a bigger sign. But you know, what are you gonna do? Like you said, it's only something that they can fix themselves. There's nothing that you can do. So you got to this point. So what started happening?
So there are some couple big incidents, and I'll tell you about them. I won't go into too much detail because they are really graphic. Yeah. But there was a couple things. She started getting jealous of my my employees. I was a manager at a company, so the people that I was managing would text me or message me,
of course, because
they need to know what to do, and she would get jealous of that. And at the time, she didn't have a car, and I had a car, so I was like, hey, you know what? Let's we can share the car. That's fine until you're able to afford your own car. So I was lending her my car. I was like, listen, these are the times that I need my car. Point blank, this is the times. So one day I'm at work, and again, I work like 45 minutes away from home, and didn't come pick me up. Waited an hour. One of the people I was managing, she was actually waiting with me, which again, not her responsibility. And then she ended up driving me home because she was like, listen, if you can't get a hold, because I couldn't get a hold, so I thought something happened. I'm freaking out because I thought something happened. She's like, you know what? Let me drive you home. She lived 10, 15 minutes from the job. I live 45. And she's like, let me just drive you home because if something happened, something happened. So I finally get home and she's chilling, watching TV in the bedroom, not doing anything. And I was like, okay, I was like, what's going on? Like you completely just
blew me off.
Blew me off. And instead of taking responsibility for what she did, she went on a tirade. I mean, she went on a complete tirade, started pushing me, started hitting me. And she's like, oh my God, who drove you home? This person drove you home. It's because you're sleeping with her. I was like, what? She thought something was wrong. But that's the thing. People in those situations, they're going to shift the blame to you. No matter how wrong they are, they're going to shift the blame to you. And it got to the point where I locked myself in a room and I locked myself into a closet because I was like, I'm not going to fight. And I'll get back to the reason why I never, ever really fought back. But I'll finish with this story first. She broke down the door.
Wow.
She broke down the door and we just ended up just having a screaming match because I ended up calming her down. But the reason why I never fought her back was because, one, if you look at the two of us, I'm more masculine presenting and I was a boxer at that time. I was boxing. So no matter which way it happened, if you would look at me and you would look at her, if you look at me, they're like, okay, so what did you do? Did you hit like... Absolutely. No one would believe me.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
No one would believe me. I was in this awkward situation. It was like, if I were to tell anyone, okay, Mel, did you hit her first? Did you push her? And that wasn't the case.
Yes.
So I was in the situation where no one would believe me, where no one would think anything. Like it would always come back to, but Mel, what did you do? How did you cause this?
Yes.
So I continue to feel stuck, and I was just in this situation where I just felt stuck. I didn't know what to do. I had taken on this responsibility of 3 people because it's her and the kids. If I just leave, then what happens to the kids? And it was just.
And what was going on with them? And obviously, were you even aware that you were in a toxic relationship with possibly a narcissist person with narcissistic tendencies?
Yeah. So at that time, I wouldn't have known that she had some kind of personality disorder. Even though, like, when I was in college, I was actually studying psychology. But just in that moment, I'm just like, oh shit, what did I like? It's kind of like, again, you're being gaslit so much that it's. Yeah. What did I do? So the moment I stepped out of it, I was like, oh my gosh, this person has a personality disorder. And I'm going to be honest, I don't even think she's a narcissist. I think she may have an anti-personality disorder. Yes. So even like a step up, but again, not going to diagnose anyone. But so yeah, I was in a really horrible spot. And that story that I told you is not even close to the worst story.
And what about the kids? Like, what was going on with them?
So I don't want to say too much about the kids because they're kids, but I'll just say this. The kids needed more help than normal kids would.
Of course.
And not even because of her, because of things going on with them. So again, they're minors, they're younger. I'm not gonna go and say their business, but the amount of work that you would do with a regular child, they needed like 20 or 30 times more help than that. Because
right, it could also have to do with the fact that their mom is having these problems, you know. And
well, it was medically. I'll say medically. So it had nothing to do with that. So I also had that in my ballpark. Right. So it was just.
And so what happened? What point did you get to that you just couldn't handle anymore? When did you get to the point that you needed to get out of this relationship? And when did you start realizing that you weren't the problem?
So.
And that you couldn't fix it. Yeah.
So I'll tell you the story that was the last straw. I'm going to try not to go into too much details because it can be long and, again, very graphic. I'll do it very quickly. I didn't leave that day, like permanently, but I knew that's when I had to get out, and I had to make sure that everything was situated with the kids and everything before I left. But this is the point where I was like, I have to leave. Very quick story. Again, had to do with the car. She took my car out to go partying. I had to go to work in the morning. She wasn't there. Pretty much missed my shift. Couldn't get a hold of her like at all. Thought something happened. I always think something happens and nothing ever happens. Finally, through my detective work, I got a hold of her best friend's aunt's house number. And I called that to see if she was there. And sure enough, she was there, passed out all day. So eventually I was like, listen, she needs to come home. And then eventually she came home in a rage, started attacking me, like seriously started attacking me. I kept my guard up because I know if I do anything, it's going to be blamed on me. Ended up in a really, really bad fight. And again, I won't go into too much detail because it's super, super graphic. But at one point, so you know the toilets, when you're in the bathroom, the toilet seat, and that part that comes off.
Yep.
She like hit me against the head with it. Like I'm not gonna go too much because it's super graphic, but it just got really bad where it wasn't just fist. It was like
exactly. Yeah.
All this crazy things. And then and at that point, I know I called my parents at some point and told them they needed to come. And they came, and from that point where that happened to where my parents came, I don't remember a thing. The point where like I got hit over the head, like I know I was conscious. I don't know. I couldn't tell you what happened. But then my parents came, the cops came. I didn't press charges. Everything was okay. We just need to
separate.
So then I went home with my parents, but I knew I had to go back to make sure everything was cool with the kids. But that was a moment that I was like, there's nothing I could ever do in any situation to warrant what happened right then and there.
Yes.
And I just done.
So what did you take now?
Sorry?
What steps did you take now? What did you decide to do?
So I was flirting with the idea of starting my own business. And that, I think having that gave me a lot of hope. And I really held on to that. And I think it was maybe a month or two later, I left. I was like, listen, the lease is up at this time. You got to be out by then. I'm not going to leave you homeless. I went to my parents. I spoke to my parents. I was like, look, guys, I'm starting a business. Can I just stay with you until I get this business off the ground? And they're like, all right, sure, go ahead, Melissa. And I stayed with my parents. And I really think just having my family, or just having some kind of strong support team right there helped me. So whether it's friends, whether it's family, whether it's calling an agency and saying, I am a domestic violence survivor or a victim or something, any kind of support you have there can really, really help pull you in. And even my brothers, they were a huge part of helping me through, and my grandmother as well. They showered me with love. And no one else really knew what was happening because I kept it to myself. Like I was so embarrassed. I didn't think anyone was going to believe me. Like, I honest to God went to work one day. My face was completely black and blue, completely destroyed. You know how if someone gets punched in the eye, it's all red, like the blood vessels burst?
Yeah.
And I think I either lied to my coworker, who's a really good friend of mine, Lane. I was like, oh, yeah, I was in a car accident or something, because no one believed that. At that point, you didn't get hurt lots. And I was like, I was in a car accident or something. And like, I was just lying to everyone. I was super embarrassed.
Was it, so when, because you've mentioned a couple of things. So were you lying to everyone because you were embarrassed that you were involved in this relationship and that you were maybe taking it? Or were you a little bit of afraid of the consequences or being blamed? What was going on more in your head? What was the bigger struggle?
So while it was happening,
yeah,
I didn't tell anyone. I lied because no one would believe. I honest to God didn't think anyone would believe me. And to this day, I didn't think anyone was going to believe me. Okay. And I think one of the best things I think my parents did was they called the cops, even though I didn't press charges. There's still that record there. Like, there's still that record there that there was a domestic assault, and they called the cops on her. So like I always hold on to them. Like, yes, this is the proof. Like this, so I've always held on to that. So in the moment, I didn't say anything because I didn't think anyone was ever going to believe me. I just, like, you look at me, you look at her, and it's just kind of like, but then afterwards, I didn't tell anyone because I was embarrassed. It was like, how could I allow myself to be in that situation? And the thing about it is, I was a victim. I was a victim, but I never want to have that victim mentality, right? So I always tell myself how to make sure that I never end up in that situation again. But at the same time, thinking that, it was kind of like, damn, Mel, how did you allow yourself to just sink so low? Because like, once you're out of it, you kind of look at it and you're like, bruh.
Right? Like, exactly. So what do you think it was? And once again, we're talking with Mel, and we're talking about relationships and how, sometimes you get into relationships that are toxic and unhealthy. And instead of, seeing the problem, we take it upon ourselves and we think that we're the problem. And this has a lot to do, like what you said, gaslighting. When someone's telling you repeatedly that you're the problem, you know what? You start thinking that you're the problem. Because I've had this happen too. So when you got to that point, what was going on? Why do you think? Because now you're saying, like, damn, Mel, like, what happened? What do you think happened?
So I'll say, I know exactly what happened now. So I'm going to say this. So a couple of years later, I realized, like, going back to the education that I learned, right? Like I said, college, study psychology, all that fun stuff. You'll ask people who are in DV relationships, why did you stay? And most of the time, they can't tell you a reason. Mm-hmm. And that's because it doesn't start, the violence is never first. There's other things that happen. And narcissists, people who suffer from most personality disorders, will do this thing where they will love bomb you. Yeah. Right? They'll give you all this love, then they'll do something crappy, and then they do something really sweet or nice afterwards. And what happens is it starts reprogramming your brain.
Yes.
So almost like, okay, I'm not going to say that. So it starts reprogramming your brain. So once the bad thing happens, your brain lights up waiting for that reward because you know the reward's coming afterwards. So it becomes almost an addiction, a habit, an addiction, and your brain starts working differently. So every time that person does something crappy to you, your brain's like, oh, where's the reward? Where's the reward? Where's the reward? And it's just the way that our brains work.
Yeah.
So
it's even an experiment.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
So it's just the way that our brains are hardwired. And a narcissist or anyone who suffers from a personality disorder, they may not know they're doing it.
Yeah.
They may not consciously know that they're doing it, but the things are going to start small. And that's why when you're at the beginning of relationships, you have to look out for these red flags, because people don't change unless they want to change, and you can't force someone to change. Yeah. So it's always going to start small. So it may be the person's buying you lots of gifts, and then they curse you out, and then they buy you some more gifts. Again, the violence isn't going to start till later on down the line, but you have to watch those red flags, because no one's going to hit you out the gate.
And then it's confusing because you're like, okay, but wait, you start making excuses for them because you're like, but they bought me these presents, but they had this beautiful gesture, but they did this, but they say they love me. And it's very confusing because it's like having a friend and an enemy right there. And the body can't tell. And what you said about the body is very, very interesting and very true. And I want everyone to understand this. You see, our human body, our mind, and our soul, they're separate. They work together, but they're separate. The body doesn't know that something's not good for you. It doesn't know the feelings. It knows the chemicals. So, for example, if you are accustomed, okay, to being love bombed, and then you're insulted, but then you're expecting the love bomb, your body is already adjusted to that. It doesn't know that it's going through a bad experience. It just knows, like a dog expects a treat, like a dog that wants to be walked in the morning. It's the morning, it's time, it's time. It doesn't know. And this is why it's so hard for us. Like you were asking yourself, like, damn, Mel, how did I get this low? We've all been through this. I had my experiences too, where I was like, my God, how could I get here? Not until I learned about epigenetics, about, like you said, psychology, neuropsychology, neuroscience, that I understand how the body, the mind, and all of it works and how it works together, that I realized that, my God, you have to fight it. You have to fight it because the tendency is going to pull you towards it, although it's not good. Although it's not good. Go ahead.
So I always encourage people, find a support system. Like I said, whether it's your family, I was very blessed to have my family be my support system, whether it's friends, whether it's, again, like I said, a hotline, pick up, I'm a victim, I need help. There's always people there to support. And then a lot of times I'll tell people, listen, if you're in a bad situation and you can't talk about it, you can text me, you can message me. Hey, Mel, I love that pepperoni pizza. I'm a vegan. I don't eat pepperoni pizza. Exactly. So if I know that maybe we need a meet, maybe we need a phone call, but you can't talk right now. And I will find resources for you in whatever state, whatever it's in, to help people out. So having that support system.
And it's important because right now I had no idea that the numbers were so high, but over 35% of teens are involved in some form of violent or abusive relationship. I had no idea that it was so common among teens to be not just verbally abusive, but physically abusive.
Yeah, it's a really huge thing. It's a big problem. And you'll be surprised how many teenagers who are abusers grow up to be well-adjusted adults. But when you're dealing with teenagers, they're literally mimicking what they see. So if you have teenagers who've only seen love in the terms of violence, that's how they're going to start portraying that. So teenagers are in a very weird state where, again, I know the teens like, oh, no, I think for myself, I do myself. A lot of your behavior is learned behavior from the observation of the people around you.
Yep.
And at a certain point, you can't take a step back and be like, oh, damn, this isn't okay. And you put yourself in therapy. Well, a lot of times, if you've witnessed abuse in any sense, you're probably not in therapy because, again, this is happening in your household, this is what you're seeing. They don't think that therapy is good. This is what you learn, and then this is what you're going to show to the world. And then something else that I have a huge, huge issue with is that a lot of TV shows and a lot of movies that are marketed to teens show completely unhealthy relationships. I know growing up, like all of my female friends, like, oh my God, The Notebook. I never watched it in its entirety, but I've seen the clips and I'm like, this is like the definition of an abusive relationship. Like they're not even in a relationship yet and he's just showing abusive signs. But women are like, well, the teenage women, they were like, oh my God, that's what love is. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
That's not what love is. That is completely unhealthy.
And it's so true that you mentioned that about Hollywood. They do have this notion about relationships that is totally, well, I believe it's unfounded for what is supposed to be a real standard, healthy relationship. It has all these highs and lows. There's no balance. There's no balance. And a real relationship, just like everything in life, is based on balance. And what happens is then we start to think that it's boring. Because when you're in a situation, although it's crazy, but that's what you know, that's what you've been taught, that's what you've learned, that's what you've been watching on television, well, you know what? It becomes normal to you. It becomes normal to you. So it's being able to tell the difference. Absolutely, absolutely. So how did you start rebuilding yourself? I mean, now you're at the point that you're like realizing, because we all get there where you're like, wow, how did I get here? What was your thought process? How do you build now to the person that you are, being a confidence coach? Let's get to the good part, the positive stuff.
Exactly. So I realized that I deserve more. And that has to do with a lot with my youngest brother. So one day, so again, starting my business, marketing, business, all this stuff, working towards creating my own business. Quit my job in the most dramatic of fashions. And I was like, boom, I'm going to go all in my business. But like, I wasn't fully mentally there yet. And one day my brother comes and he gives me this big bear hug. Now my brother's a big dude. My brother was about to play college lacrosse. Played football, was like big, strong, athletic, gym every day type of dude. And he gives me this big bear hug. Now, everyone in my family is super strong. I used to box, but that brother played varsity sports. My other brother played varsity. We're all super strong. But at this point, he's like, I'm not letting go. And I mean, it came to the point where my mom was like screaming at us. And I'm like, get off me. And he's like, I'm not letting go. And he's just hugging me. And he's like, you're like, basically, you're better than all this.
Right. That's beautiful.
And like, I'm like, let me go. Like, it's like, I'm not the most affectionate person with my family. My family's super affectionate. And I'm like, yeah, let's get this pound, like pound it. Let's pound it. And like, no, give me a hug. So my brother's like holding me and he won't let me go. And like, as much as I hated it in the moment, that was a major turning point for me. Yeah. And it just stuck with me that I deserve more. I got to put out more. And I started reading. I started like researching like all the self-help book stuff, and I mean, if you would have seen me a week before then, completely different person from the way that I walk.
You broke a wall.
Yeah, it just broke down a wall. It literally just broke down a wall completely. And I mean, completely different person. Completely different person. Like I said, from the way I walk, talk, dressed, everything. I mean, in a week, I went from wearing baggy clothes and Jordans. Again, nothing wrong with baggy clothes and Jordans. I just needed a change. So I went from like baggy clothes and Jordans and fitted caps to polos and Sperry's and like, I mean, complete 180. And again, like I said, there's nothing wrong with baggy clothes and fitted hats and Jordans and things like that. But I needed a change. I needed to see the change on the outside. And that's where I did that. And I just focused all my energy into my business. And sure enough, my business took off. I landed a huge contract, maybe a month after we opened, huge contract with a university. So it just, once I had it up here, once this mindset changed, everything around me started changing. And I did need to do a lot of healing as well. And that came along with the self-help. But you can say as much as you want that you want to change, but if you don't shift your mindset, not going to happen. Because you can say it. You can say you want it, but
no, but I'm glad you said that, because, a lot of people talk about not being successful, and they think that, oh, what did I not do in marketing? Or maybe I should have put more money in ads, or maybe it's my sales. I'm not good at sales, or I'm not persuasive enough. But I have to tell you, I've seen people who have every T crossed. But what they don't have crosses here. And you know it because you and I are very into personal development. And every successful person I know, every one of our mentors says the same thing. Work harder on yourself than you do on your business, and you will be successful, because it all starts here. We create a reality here first. I always say this. Everything that we see in the world was once someone's dream, that was once someone's idea first. Our thoughts create a reality, and our thoughts are real. Actually, they've been measured. They're actual waveforms that can be scientifically measured. Thoughts are things. So go ahead. What were we going to say?
Oh, shoot. Let me try and find my train of thought. So it's like, I'll kind of piggyback on what you were saying. So I'm a confidence coach. I teach confidence. I have confidence webinars, confidence classes. I teach confidence. And I say that I teach confidence, but confidence really is inside of you. Sometimes you just need that push to the surface. But like in terms of business, you can take every single sales course from every single master, from every single guru. You will not be good at sales until you have sales confidence. You have to change this first. You could have everything laid out in front of you. You can have the puzzle pieces to a $1 billion company. If you don't have the confidence, if you don't have the proper mindset, it's not going to flourish. And then you can take somebody who has absolutely nothing, but they have that mindset and that drive, and that, because it all comes together. Because you can't just have mindset, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of people are like, I'm doing the law of attraction, I'm meditating, I'm doing all this, nothing's happening. Mm-hmm. Did you take that first step? Did you take that action? Because it's a process, right? Mindset, action. Yeah. Mindset, action. So you can't.
It's so funny you said that. I was watching a video on YouTube about this guy who made this amazing video, and I was so into it at the beginning because it was this whole thing on personal development. And I mean, this was a documentary that was it was amazing cinematography, right? And so he's talking, and as he's going on, I'm like, okay. So he's talking about how he would go through personal development, and he would take a course, and he would go on this huge high, super huge high, and then he would go on this huge low. And then he would go into another course, and huge line, huge low. And he was dissing gurus and talking about how personal development is a scam and all this bunch of stuff. And throughout the entire documentary, all I kept thinking about was, dude, when did you take action? When did you take action? You keep on talking about course after course after course, but I don't hear you applying anything that you learned in any of these courses, but yet now you're making a movie about them. So I want everyone to understand the law of attraction is real. It exists. It exists. But in order to have a vision, in order to have a dream, you have to set goals and take action. Take action. And you can talk about this. We're also afraid of failure, especially in this country. So we're afraid to do things because we're afraid to fail. Because failure is looked like a bad thing. I mean, and I always say, look at Einstein. Imagine if he would have thought that 1,000 freaking times. Exactly. I mean, come on, who wouldn't have given up? I think at 500, I would have been like, you know what? Turn in the towel, man. Let's go eat. You did a great job. Good job. Good effort. But no. And failure is not bad. Okay? Failure is not bad at all. And you're not a loser because you fail. You're a loser because you don't get back up. You don't. And go ahead.
I always tell people, failure is not permanent unless you allow it to be. Listen, I have failed so many times in my life. So many times in my life. Like, people look at me now, people who don't know my past, they're like, wow, Mel, like, you're so confident. I have failed so many times in my life. And each and every single failure was a learning opportunity to help me come back stronger. Every single failure has allowed me to learn something to help me become a more well-rounded person so I can make more money, have better communication, do so many things, travel the world. Failures aren't permanent unless you allow them to be. And the thing about it is, never look at failure as a bad thing. I mean, I take calculated risk. I want everyone, you always should take risks, make sure they're calculated risks. Don't just jump freely into nothing. Always make sure there's some kind of plan. You can even be spontaneous, but make sure they're calculated risks. But man, I will take huge risks. I take huge risks. And sometimes they give me huge returns. Other times it can fail. Like,
yeah.
It just,
yeah. I mean, the key is, remember, like, you're going to lose a couple of battles. You're going to lose a couple of battles, but keep your eye on the war. As long as you win the war, you can lose as many battles as you want. Exactly. It's not over.
It's not over. One of my favorite people, I really look up to him. I know it's gonna, like, everyone's like, really, Mel, that's one of your, like, biggest influences? Jay-Z. I love Jay-Z.
Oh,
I was born in Brooklyn. Big ups to Brooklyn. I love Jay-Z. I love Jay-Z. I think everything that he has done is a testament that you have the mindset, put forth the action, you can accomplish whatever you dream or whatever you want to accomplish. I mean, this boy came from, I've been to the Marcy Projects. I've been inside of like apartments at the Marcy Projects. I've been to the Marcy Projects. It was rough. He came from he came at a time where there was no opportunity available to anyone inside of Marcy. It's like there's no opportunity. It's not, most people don't start selling drugs because let me get a drug dealer. It's because if there's no other way for you to pay your rent, to feed your family, to have money coming in, you're going to turn to something. I always tell people, don't judge people too harshly, because some people may find this offensive. When people are in poverty, they don't have time to evaluate middle-class values.
Exactly. No, you're in survival mode.
You're in survival.
A different brain.
So, yes, he did some bad things in his life. Yes, he sold drugs, but the moment he saw that way out through music, he took that way out. You can't judge people in poverty too harshly, because if you are in poverty, you don't know what you can do. Like in my own personal life, like I grew up like super middle class. Like, yeah. I mean, middle class. Mm-hmm. But within my own adult life, I've been in situations where I was homeless. I've been in situations where I didn't have money. I did have a support system where I can lean on my parents. Not too much. Like, I never took advantage of my parents. But if I was in a different state and I had nowhere to live, I could call my parents and they could send me $50 to go into a motel. So I had that. But if you're, and even with the youth, it's even harder when you're younger. If you're a youth, if you're young and you're going through poverty, you don't have that support system. If you have nowhere to sleep, there's no one to call for $50 to stay at a motel one night. There's no one to call to say, hey, I need to live with you for the next 3 months while I start my business. I was very lucky, because I mean, like, super middle class, like not lower middle class, like, I mean, the epitome of middle class is where I grew up. And even though in my young adult life, I went through trying times, I've been blessed because I'm in that situation. So when you're looking at people who are living in poverty, whether it's in the United States or outside of the United States, you can't judge them harshly.
No.
When there's no other options, there's no other options.
Yeah.
If your family's going to starve and you see a loaf of bread sticking outside from the grocery store, you're going to grab that loaf of bread, because you are in survival mode. So never judge people in poverty harshly, because if you were in that situation, truly in that situation, I always tell people, not just in that situation, I mean, truly in that situation where you can't call mom and dad, you can't call a friend, you can't call someone, you can't lean on someone, you don't have a savings, you don't have a trust, and none of that, you don't know what you would do. And then coming back to Jake. So
no, 100% true. I want kids to understand this, because a lot of bullying is going on now. A lot of cyberbullying is going on, and what happens is, in this system, we tend to criticize what is unfamiliar, what we don't know. And I want everyone to understand that you have to be mindful. Like you said, you don't know what is going on in that person's life until you're in someone's shoes. You're never going to fully understand. And I feel the same way. Like, I see that when it comes to maybe strippers. You know, women have families. They have masters. They don't have the money to go to college. They don't have anyone to help them. You know, how are they supposed to get ahead? So it's trying to understand that not everyone is given the same circumstances. Not everyone has the same upbringing. Try to always be mindful and try to think, man, what would I do if I was there? You know. So you're a confidence coach now.
Yep.
Yeah. And how did we get into that?
So with the confidence coaching, so everything always kind of like falls into place. Once that mindset is correct, like, everything falls into place. So I had my first company, Skill and Well Fitness. It was a fitness company based on the East Coast, still alive and well. Even with COVID-19 right now, like we're still alive and well. Not as big as what we were, we're still trekking through. And I started posting these motivational videos, right? Had the company, that's all I was doing, was had that company, managing that company, owning that company. But I was posting motivational videos because I was going through a hard time. And whenever I'm going through a hard time, I'm like, boom, I'm going to swing it around. I'm going to make sure that everyone is inspired. If this is my lesson, if this is what I need to learn, let me put it out so other people can learn from what I'm doing. So I'm posting these motivational videos on Snapchat, on Instagram, all this other stuff. And people are like taking them. People like them. And one day I get a message and someone's like, hey, can you come speak at my event, this and that? I was like, okay, sure. I thought they wanted me to speak about fitness. They thought I was a motivational speaker from my videos. And I was like, boom, okay, I'm a motivational speaker now. Went there, fell in love with it, loved it. And then someone told me, Mel, you're doing it on stage. Why don't you help people one-on-one as well? And I was like, okay. And that's how I became a life coach. And I was helping women break through that glass ceiling. And as I'm doing that, I realized that a lot of what I was coaching was just confidence. Because don't get me wrong, there are a lot of external factors that are there that are stopping women from breaking through the glass ceiling. And there's ways to navigate around it. But on the same time, women aren't taught to have as much confidence as men growing up. I was very lucky in that sense because my brother and I were 11 months and 2 weeks apart. So whatever he was being taught, I was being taught. So we, like, everything was like so even. We were raised exactly the same way. Exactly. Confidence and stuff that, like, whatever I did, he did. So thank you to my parents for raising a confident person. But I realized that a lot of that was holding women back was confidence, that their male counterparts were getting a raise because they were asking for it, and the women weren't asking for it. Or men were getting higher salaries because they asked for higher salaries, and women were not asking for higher salaries, and they felt bad about it. And essentially, I realized that I wasn't coaching so much like corporate stuff. I was mostly coaching confidence. And I was like, okay, this can actually help a wider range of people. Yeah, I still have my niche, but everyone needs confidence. And I realized that I'm super confident. If you see me in real life, you think I'm the most confident. I'm not even trying to toot my own horn, but I'm super confident. And it's because of everything that I went through as well and how I was raised. But I was like, let me help people out this way.
Right, because you're in that position. And it's a blessing. It's a blessing that you can take what you've learned and show it to others. And another thing that I want to point out is how when you start doing things, you start changing your mindset and moving in the right direction, the universe starts putting things in your life. Mm-hmm. And things you didn't even know. Like, for example, you went ahead, you didn't give up. And then look, the universe started putting stuff in your way. Instead of going down when you were feeling the roughness, the rough times, the hardship, you started putting motivational videos out there. What happened? The universe. Exactly. So once again, go back to the law of attraction. Okay. I don't know if you were going to say something.
No, go ahead.
Right. So it's very important that you realize that it's all mindset. And if you start working on yourself, you will see that your reality, like you were saying, your external world will begin to change. Because sometimes, we're unhappy and, we want other people to change. We want circumstances to change. We hate everything. We hate school, we hate our job, we hate this, and we're expecting all of that to change without realizing that change starts from within.
The only thing you can do is change yourself. You can't change other people. At the end of the day, control what you can control and accept what you can control. And you'll see that worlds and worlds and worlds of things just have to change for you. And kind of going back to relationship, because that's what we were really talking about. A lot of times we get stuck in these relationships and we want to change the other person. I always tell people, look within, start changing yourself. Maybe the person will change, or if you start changing yourself, you may realize, wow, I'm growing into another person and this is not the right person for me. And you'll end up meeting someone like so much better.
Exactly.
Don't try to change the other person.
Absolutely. You're 100% right. You're 100% right. Well, Mel, thank you so much for jumping on and for being so honest. And for those who had the opportunity to jump on, I want to thank you so much for viewing the show. And remember, if you have any questions, Or if you want to work on your confidence, you can always directly put Mel up, Mel Andre, or put the links down as soon as we're done. And that's about it, guys. I want to thank you so much, and I want to remind you to always live legendary.